In the Tournament of Champions that is Fat Bear Week, the merely pudgy bears have been winnowed away, and only the truly fattest are left standing. On this Fat Bear Tuesday, we conclude another titanic Fat Bear Week. The two finalists are quintessential examples of success in the bear world, and they display the supreme adaptations that allow bears to survive. This is Mike Fitz, your resident naturalist with explore.org. My co-host is Ranger Naomi Boak with Katmai National Park, and we're here to talk about the two fattest bears on Brooks River this year as chosen by the public and their journey to achieve such great success. Naomi, great to speak with you, and happy Fat Bear Tuesday.
Oh, happy Fat Bear Tuesday to you. And I am not the one shooting off that rifle, and neither are you. Just want to make sure people are not guessing who's being shot back there.
Yeah, so I apologize for that. I live in rural northern Maine, and one of my neighbors who lives probably about a quarter mile away is doing some target shooting. Unbeknownst to me, it started right before the broadcast. So if you hear that, don't be alarmed. It's kind of a normal part of rural life in this area. But yeah, it's Fat Bear Tuesday. It's a great day to celebrate bears and to celebrate their success overall. If you haven't taken the Bear Cam audience survey yet and you've been watching the Bear Cams, please take a moment to do that. You can find a link to that in the featured comment at the bottom of the page. And also, I'd like to thank all of the students and teachers that submitted questions for Ranger Brooklyn and my Bear Cam in the Classroom broadcast. And you can find that up on our YouTube channel right now on the Bears and Bison YouTube channel for explore.org. And also one of our moderators is going to be dropping that link, I think, into the comments at the bottom of the page right now. So thanks to all of our students and teachers who participated in that. Brooklyn and I had a great time enjoying hosting that broadcast. And Naomi, yeah, this is Fat Bear Week. This is the fattest time of the year for brown bears, and we're in the midst of the final matchup. So some people might be tuning in for the first time and don't know too much about Fat Bear Week. Can you walk us through what's happening in Fat Bear Week today?
Well, sure. I mean, Fat Bear Week, first of all, is the best week of the year. That's it. But Fat Bear Week is a single elimination tournament for you to choose your favorite fattest bear. And here you see the brackets that we started out with. And this was such a fat year. For us, this is really a celebration of the hard work and success of these bears at getting fat. Because if they don't get fat, they don't survive through winter's hibernation when they have no food. And they don't survive the spring when there's very little food for them when they come out of hibernation. So, and also it's a celebration of the healthy ecosystem that allows these bears to be so fat. So now voting is really pretty simple this year. Now the hardest part of voting, I think, is selecting your favorite fattest bear. And the criteria can be your own. It can be the bear you think who gained the most weight over the season. It could be the biggest bear. Or perhaps you've been following a bear for a long time on the Bear Cams, or you just fell in love with a bear this season, and that bear gets your vote. So once you've decided, then you you go to fatbearweek.org. That's fatbearweek.org. Click on that bar below your choice, and then put in your email. We're not going to use the email. It's just to make sure there's no voter fraud and we don't have people voting 100 times. Then your vote will be tallied, and once you vote and enter your vote, you'll see how many people have voted thus far. And polls close at 6 p.m. Alaska time today and 10 p.m. Eastern time, and we are not revealing any numbers beforehand. We will reveal at 6 p.m. There are no absentee ballots to be counted. I'm sure the contestants are not going to dispute the results. So either go to Katmai National Park's Facebook page or go to fatbearweek.org, and you'll learn who won. So, Mike, I think you have a special announcement.
We do, yeah. As the as we conclude Fat Bear Week, a lot of our Fat Bear Week voters have asked Explore.org how they can support Katmai National Park, and we do have an exciting announcement about this. So today marks the start of what we're calling the Otis Fund to benefit the Katmai Conservancy. The Katmai Conservancy is the friends group that supports Katmai National Park. So today through October 10, you have 3 ways to contribute to the Otis Fund. You can donate through Explore.org's Facebook page, on Explore.org's YouTube page, and then also on the Katmai Conservancy's website, which is katmaiconservancy.org. Links to donate will also be available in the comments section of this page on the live chat channel, and also on fatbearweek.org shortly. Your donations for the Otis Fund will be matched by Explore.org up to $25,000. And the final match total will be announced during a live event with the Katmai Conservancy this Saturday at 1 p.m. Alaska time, 5 p.m. Eastern time. So please stay tuned for that. So we wanted to mention that up front in case you have the opportunity to donate to the Otis Fund. And we certainly want you to check it out. It's a great. It'll be, I think, a great thing for the Katmai Conservancy going forward. But of course, Naomi, we're going to spend some time talking about the 2 Fat Bear Week finalists in a few moments. But before we do, I think it's maybe important to reflect on the summer that was at Brooks River, and the season that allowed these bears to get so fat. Our 2 finalists, number 747 and number 32. Who is also nicknamed Chunk. This summer was unprecedented in many ways.
Yeah, it was quite a summer to be at Brooks Camp as a human and as a bear. Like the rest of the world, Brooks Camp and Katmai National Park were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. I don't think there's a place in the world that has escaped that. So we as rangers came here a month later than usual. The park opened a month later than usual in July. We didn't have any overnight visitors until August. The campground remained closed for the whole time. And we did our best to abide by CDC guidelines and recommend that our visitors do so as well to protect not only visitors but staff as well. And unfortunately, the virus came to us, and some of us tested positive and got the virus, and so some of us had to go into isolation, and others had to quarantine for 2 weeks. So Brooks Camp closed down for 2 weeks, allowing us to heal and be safe, make sure we weren't going to infect others. So then we started up again and have gone through the season without another positive test. And what a season it was. And Mike, one thing that didn't change was the salmon run. And we're here, and the Fat Bears are here because of this extraordinary salmon run. Tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. The road to Fat Bear greatness really is, in wintertime survival, is paved with salmon, or maybe it's lubricated with salmon slime, whatever you want to think about it, because the salmon, they are the reason why we have such a large population of brown bears living within Katmai National Park. More than 2,000 bears are estimated to live within the park boundaries. And Brooks River is part of the Naknek River watershed. It's one of the largest tributaries of the Naknek Lake, of Naknek Lake and Naknek River. And this year, the Naknek River experienced its largest salmon run ever recorded. More than 4 million salmon entered the Naknek River and swam into Naknek Lake. They distributed throughout the watershed, but Brooks River receives a high percentage of those fish overall. For every 1 million fish that swims into Naknek River, probably about 200,000 of those enter Brooks River. So the Brooks River receives about 20% of the overall Naknek River escapement. So this year, that means probably about 800,000 salmon may have utilized Brooks River. So we had instead of just like pulses of salmon, which we talked about in previous years, some a trickle of salmon here, then a wave coming in. It seemed like it was just one giant tsunami of fish that showed up in late June and July. The bears were extremely well fed from the beginning of the season, and now they're still reaping the rewards of that very large salmon run by feasting on the spawned out salmon, the dead and dying salmon, those salmon that are still spawning in Brooks River. So the bear activity this year has been influenced, of course, by the salmon run, but it's also been influenced by the relative lack of humanity at Brooks River. So I think that's another storyline that I think is important to discuss, Naomi, is how the bear activity shifted this year, depending on the sheer abundance of fish and also the relative lack of humans that we saw at the river.
Yeah, well, we'll start out with the fish, which was it's very unusual to see a lot of bear activity.
Oh, it looks like maybe we lost Naomi there for a moment. Oh, there you are.
Oh, am I back?
Yeah, you're back. Yeah, please continue your thoughts there.
Okay. So there were so many family groups in the river in July. The river at the falls was wall-to-wall salmon, and the fish were crowding each other out. Some got injured and ended up downstream. The bears were so sated, they were hydrating like mad, which means that they were only eating the fattiest parts of the fish. So there were salmon fillets floating downstream. So there were families hanging out, sows with cubs, subadults hanging out on the lower river like crazy, sleeping there. And we saw a lot of playfulness. We don't usually see bear families, sows with cubs, play with other bear families. But cubs were playing with cubs from other litters. Sometimes cubs were playing with subadults. It was really amazing. And the other thing, and one other reason that happened was because we had fewer people because of the pandemic. There were fewer people in the river. So the bears really owned the river this year. So a good year for them to own the river because there was so much salmon there. And also at the falls, the behavior changed because there was so much salmon. Normally in a season, we see some of the most dominant bears trying to shake up the bear hierarchy and move up the ladder or defend their spots on the hierarchy or defend their fishing spots. And we didn't really see fights this year. We saw a little yelling at each other, I want this fishing spot, you can't have it, a few displays of dominance, but there was so much salmon that there really was no need to waste energy on fighting. So it was really an amazing, amazing season to watch. But now I think we need to go back to today, which is the Fat Bear Week final vote. Mike?
Yeah, the two fattest bears in the competition are left standing, number 32 Chunk and number 747. They both are large adult males. They both benefited greatly from the salmon run this year. The road to the Fat Bear Week finals, though, they had to sort of overcome some pretty stiff competition in the river and also in this sort of virtual event. 747, for example, got a bye to the second round in the tournament. There he defeated 812, a young adult male who might be quickly growing, but he needs, I think, a few more years before he can really compete with 747. And then in the semifinals, 747 defeated the paunchy 151 Walker. Walker is no small bear at all. He's probably an 1,100, 1,200 pound bear, but 747 was able to defeat him to reach the finals. And 747 is one of the bears that I enjoy watching at Brooks River the most. He's a very dominant animal. And he's also very successful at fishing. And I'm going to admit this once again, Naomi. I said it before in our Fat Bear Week bracket reveal, but
Mhm.
I really am sort of a partisan hack for 747 in Fat Bear Week and an unabashed supporter of his campaign. And I've been so for several years. He's one of the more dominant bears on the river, estimated to weigh more than 1,400 pounds. He's really, truly one of the largest bears on Earth, and the most massive bear that I've ever seen in person. So you can't grow as big as 747 without being a really good angler and dominating access to the most productive fishing spots. Early in summer, that's what he was doing. He was at the falls practically every day fishing for salmon. He did take a break though in July away from fishing at Brooks Falls to actually well to prioritize some other life tasks like courting this female bear number 482. So we saw him away from the falls for a period of time, but the amount of salmon in the lower river that you mentioned before allowed him to actually still continue to feed while he was pursuing that possible mating opportunity with number 482. Late in the summer, though, he returned to the river and the falls, and he's just pretty much been there ever since. We haven't seen him that much on the cameras recently, but he's done very well for himself this year. So again, you want to look at one of the largest bears on Earth, watch the cameras, look for 747. He is a true titan of bears on the river. But he faces some really big competition today. Naomi, you and I both predicted that 747 would reach the finals, but we didn't predict actually who he would face. Can you tell us a little bit
Right.
about his competition today, the aptly named Chunk?
Yes, number 32, Chunk. He had a tough road to get to the finals. He is a big bear, no doubt about it. But he had to first defeat 719, who is part of the Holly royal family. And she is taking care of two cubs, but still got fat. And Chunk beat her. Then Chunk faced off with the Queen of Corpulence herself, our reigning Fat Bear champion, Holly. Now, Holly got really fat. Look at the difference in her in late June and late September. But she had a very rambunctious cub to take care of and feed. So she didn't get quite as big as she was last year, but she is certainly a fan favorite, and it was tough to get by her. Then Chunk, if it wasn't hard enough to beat those two, he had to face 128 Grazer. And we know on the river, no bear wants to face 128 Grazer. And in this competition, I don't think anyone wanted to face her either. Look at her, skinny mini, in late June, and look at her in September. That is a fat bear. And she had two cubs this year. So, I mean, that's quite an accomplishment. But then look at Chunk's belly. I mean, he is known to be a playful bear, even though he tried to vie for dominance last year in the hierarchy and kind of was put in his place. This year didn't have to do that, and all he had to do was eat. And he did get a chance to play some. So even with playing, look at that bulbous belly. He packed on the pounds to make it to the finals. I think Chunk deserves it after all those tough fights.
Absolutely. And Chunk he's an interesting bear to watch because he does display some of those behaviors that you wouldn't really expect from a very large and potentially very dominant adult male brown bear, where he will be, somewhat tolerant of other bears. He will occasionally play with other bears. He'll sometimes sit downstream in them and wait for them to release, a bit of their catch so he can scavenge the leftovers. We don't often see that out of a bear like 747, for instance, or, another one of Chunk's rivals on the river, number 856. So a very interesting bear to watch. I think both of these bears are well deserving to be in the final this year. I also want to reiterate, though, that their success really is years in the making. We see these bears as as young animals on the river, growing into these giants as adults. And when they're subadults, it's really kind of hard to predict whether they're going to be able to grow into such large animals. I think we're going to try to maybe bring up a couple of images if we have those here. Yeah, this is number 32 Chunk in 2007. The first year he was identified as an independent bear. This is him as a 2.5-year-old, believe it or not.
Wow.
So this is little Chunk right here. He got his nickname because he was always sort of pudgy. He's kept that sort of like pear or light bulb shape throughout his life. But this is an example of just how small these bears are in the first few years of their life. And then, 747, yeah, same thing. This is 747 as a young subadult in 2004. And when I first saw both of these bears at Brooks River, I really had no idea that they would grow into the giants that they have today. But yeah, their success is years in the making. Their survival skills are paying off right now, and we can see that in the fat reserves that they have. They're really well positioned to survive the winter. Brooks, this is a time of the year, however, where the bears' time remaining at Brooks River is rapidly dwindling. It's a season of change for them, and soon they'll put on their fat reserves to good use. One of the questions that we get often is, what will the bears do, the rest of the month, or where will they go when they depart Brooks River? And most of the bears are going to start to migrate away from Brooks River fairly soon. We are definitely going to have some great bear watching opportunities over the next few weeks on the bear cams. However, the peak of the salmon spawning activity in Brooks River is September, so there's going to be fewer and fewer salmon available for bears to scavenge going forward. So the bears are going to be departing to perhaps a few small streams that may have a couple of late spawning runs in them. Some of the glacial streams that feed into Naknek Lake, for instance, once the freezing temperatures return to the area, those glaciers slow down and less sediment is flowing out of the glaciers and into the streams. Salmon might move into some of those streams to spawn, and there are bears that will fish for those spawning salmon sometimes into October, but most of the bears are going to be migrating to their denning habitats coming up pretty soon. And where do bears den? They usually den in the surrounding mountains, anywhere from a couple miles, like this den on top of Dumpling Mountain, a couple miles from Brooks River, to maybe 2 or 3 dozen miles away, just depending on where they've learned to find good habitat. And this is an example of where bear dens are found in Katmai National Park. The geology doesn't really allow for them to find caves or rock crevices to den in, so they're going to excavate a new den into the hillsides each year. They're looking for steep slopes that collect a lot of snow, and also that are fairly well vegetated, because the vegetation, the roots from the plants, help to stabilize the den and entrance and the ceiling overall. So that's what's coming up for our bears over the next several weeks. When they're going into the den, though, they're not going to eat, they're not going to drink, they're not going to pass waste, they're not going to defecate or urinate. So they need those fat reserves to not only keep them warm as they expend energy during the winter, but also to keep them hydrated as well. So that's where they're getting their water in the wintertime by metabolizing fat. When they come out of the den, though, Naomi, it's their work isn't done, actually. The springtime can actually be a difficult time for some of the bears in Katmai National Park.
Yeah, spring, we think of, oh, okay, the bears have to get fat for hibernation because they're not eating that whole time. But once they come out, there's very little food around here in the spring. And it's really hard for the sows that have cubs, because they have to be not only feeding them and producing all that very high fat milk to feed the cubs, but they have to wrangle these tiny cubs who are only a few pounds at that point, and go from wherever they have denned to where their summertime feeding grounds would be. And for our bears, it's the Brooks River. So those fat stores still have to keep those bears going through the spring. And then in late spring, it's mating season. So they're still using the energy from the fat stores to get them through mating season. And then finally they get to the Brooks River and to their eating grounds, and the salmon start appearing in the Brooks River in mid to late June. And then it's it's all over again. It's hard work for these bears.
And we're coming up towards the conclusion in our chat, Naomi. I think 747 and Chunk really do demonstrate success in the barrel world. They're going to be using those fat reserves, as you mentioned, in the springtime to fuel their pursuit of mating opportunities, which are very limited for male bears. So, what they're gaining, what they have on their bodies now is extremely important towards their reproductive success overall. There's still plenty of time, however, to vote in Fat Bear Week. Can you remind us where people can go to vote in Fat Bear Week?
Okay, now you still have some hours to vote. And so we want you to go to fatbearweek.org. There we are, and choose either 32 Chunk or 747 as your favorite fat bear. Remember, you're the ones who decide who is crowned the 2020 Fat Bear Week champion. And then once you've made your choice, you click on that link below your favorite bear, put in your email address so we know you're not going to vote 20 times, and then enter. And when you enter, you'll see how many people have voted for what bear at the time you voted. So there's still time. Polls stay open until 6 p.m. Alaska time and 10 p.m. Eastern time. And at that point, we will announce on Facebook, on Katmai's Facebook page, and right there on fatbearweek.org, the winners of this extremely competitive Fat Bear Week. I mean, it was an amazing season to watch bears, and the bears came back kind of fat, and they've just gotten extraordinarily fat. And we've got two really great big competitors. And Fat Bear Week has been extraordinarily successful this year too. We've had 3 times the number of votes this year so far, and we're not done yet. So keep it up. If you haven't voted, vote. fatbearweek.org. And I can't wait for 6 p.m. How about you, Mike?
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to the conclusion of Fat Bear Week. And again, a hat tip: vote 747 here. This is my vote 747 hat from last year, but I got to get it out this year. He could be the Fat Bear Week champion after several years of my campaigning for him. So we'll see. The vote still have several more hours to go. This is the last live chat with our Katmai Rangers this year. However, the last live chat with Naomi, her season ends in just a few days with Katmai National Park. And if you visit a national park, you talk to a park ranger, most likely you're going to be talking to a seasonal park ranger who's hired for no more than 6 months. And then after that, the park's like, thanks for your hard work, but you need to find something else to do. So Naomi's going to concentrate on some other tasks coming up this winter, but I do want to thank her for her hard work this year. And also Ranger Brooklyn, who couldn't join us for the broadcast today, but she's also worked extremely hard this year. Both of those Rangers, both Naomi and Brooklyn, were key to the success of Fat Bear Week this year. If you've enjoyed the alliterative social media posts from Katmai National Park, this past week, they're the writers behind that. So, being very creative, much more so than I was when I tried to write those posts for Katmai National Park many years ago. So doing a great job with that. And both Brooklyn and Naomi also, experienced some personal sacrifice this year to make, Bear Camp a success overall. Brooklyn wasn't able to travel to Brooks Camp because of the pandemic and the lack of housing at Brooks River this year. And it's difficult to be a ranger for a park where you're not physically at the park and you can't necessarily see that park. So, but she powered through it. She did a wonderful job working remotely. And then Naomi underwent 2 quarantine periods, two 14-day quarantine periods to survive a summer at Katmai. One during the beginning of the summer, so the park could make sure that she was COVID-free before she traveled out to Brooks Camp. And then later in the summer as well, she also underwent another 2-week quarantine period. So she powered through that, basically living in a small dorm room for a month during that time period. So again, I'd like to thank both of those. Both of our rangers for all their hard work this year. And yeah, thanks again, Naomi, for everything that you've done for Bear Cam this year.
Oh, and thank you, Mike, and Explore, and the Katmai Conservancy, and all the cam ops that help us enjoy all of this. And it's a privilege to work at Brooks Camp. I have one of the best jobs in the world. I certainly have the best commute in the world. Walk a mile and a half with bears. It doesn't get better than that. And it takes a village to do all this. And this is a pretty great village. So I love Fat Bear Week, and go out and support it, everyone.
Absolutely. And check out the Otis Fund. The links are up on the web pages that I mentioned before. So Explore.org's Facebook page, Explore.org's YouTube channel, and in the featured comments down below the live camera feed. If you can't donate, we understand that. Be sure, though, however, to let your elected representatives at all levels of government know that you care and support parks and wild areas, clean water, and wildlife conservation. Your vote really does matter in this election season. And as we move into the final hours of Fat Bear Week, we're provided with this opportunity to reflect on the summer that was at Katmai. The COVID-19 pandemic found its way to Katmai, underscoring that this remote national park is connected to the rest of the world. We witnessed salmon in abundance that really had never been seen before at Brooks River. And the awesome volume of fish freed most bears at the river from competition for food. They had the freedom to express behaviors that normally they wouldn't have the energy or the time for when food resources are more limited. And as winter approaches, we see success in bears like Chunk and 747. They've achieved what every bear strives for in the weeks preceding hibernation. They are well provisioned to survive winter and emerge from the den equipped to handle the challenges of another year in the wilds of Katmai. Happy Fat Bear Week to everyone. And thank you, Naomi, for joining me today and for your hard work. Thanks to the Explore.org staff for making these live chats possible. And I hope everyone is well and enjoy the rest of your Fat Bear Tuesday this year.